America is beating the rest of the world in drug overdose deaths. Every day about 120 people die from opioids. Deaths due to opioids is 5 times higher today than it was in 1999. Between 2000 and 2016, around 600,000 people in this country died from overdose of prescription drugs. Believe it or not, but our country consumes more than 80% of the world's opioids, and we only make up 5% of the world's population. Since 2001, this problem has cost the US over $1 trillion. Life expectancy dropped for the second time in the US because of opioids. In 2016 alone, around 63,000 Americans died from opioid overdoses. That's a 21% increase than the previous year. Life expectancy is at 78 years old in the United States. In the UK is at 81, Japan 83, Australia 82, and South Korea being at 82 also. Research says that prescription opioids are a substitute drug for heroin. Over 80% of the people that are addicted to heroin misused prescription opioids before.
According to U.S. government studies, more than half of young heroin users aren't deliberately seeking a thrill through drugs. Instead, their addiction starts with something completely legal.
People go into an ER and they expect somebody to solve their problem. And that seems to be the answer.
They're not getting it, from dealers on the streets. It's coming from prescription drugs. They're getting their initial contact through doctors who mean well, and they're getting too many refills on their prescriptions, and they become addicted to OxyContin or Percocet. And once they crack down, the government cracks down on this, the black market prices for these drugs becomes astronomically high. And there's a very cheap alternative, which is street heroin, which is very, very cheap.
The problem began in the late 1990s with a drug producer named Purdue came out with a drug called OxyContin. They would spread misinformation about the drug, claiming that it was harmless and non-addictive. Doctors began over-prescribing opioids to deal with pain. Purdue generated well over $1 billion in 2017. In 2007, Purdue was fined over $600 million for spreading false information about OxyContin and its addictive properties. 3 of Purdue's executives also had to pay $34.5 million in fines for misbranding.
Back in 2007, Purdue pleaded guilty to criminal charges of misleading the public about OxyContin's addictive qualities and agreed to a civil penalty of nearly $635 million. This week's decision comes as Purdue and other opioid manufacturers are facing lawsuits from some 400 cities and states, alleging they fueled addiction by misrepresenting the risks.
Purdue announced that OxyContin will no longer be sending reps to doctors' offices to promote their product. He did this because the United States is dealing with a huge problem of addiction and ODs from these prescription drugs. Right now, America's opioid overdoses for people under 50 is the leading cause of death right now. We prescribe 6 times more than France and Portugal, even though they have better access to health care. In 2015, more people in the USA died from overdoses than any other year on record. More than 36,000 that died in car accidents. More than 43,000 that died from HIV and AIDS. In 10 years, a little town called Williamson, located in West Virginia with a population around 3,200 people, had over 20 million prescription pain medicines shipped over there. And a study by the Boston Medical Center revealed that 1 in 12 doctors have received money from the drug companies pushing opioid pharmaceuticals between 2013 and 2015. They found that 68,177 doctors were paid a combined $46 million from these big drug companies, these fucking legalized drug dealers. Opioids came from a poppy plant that originated in southeastern Europe and Western Asia. An opiate is a natural substance that comes from opium found in that poppy plant. Opioids are synthetic or semi-synthetic and that are man-made in the lab that have the same effect as opium does. Examples of natural opiates are codeine, morphine. Some examples of opioids are fentanyl, Percocet, oxycodone, and hydrocodone. These substances work by attaching to the opioid receptors in the brain, spinal cord, and the nervous system. When this happens, it reduces the perception of pain and gives a person a sense of well-being.
Here's why our brains love opioids.
When opioids enter the brain, they land on tiny docking stations at the end of your nerves called receptors.
Typically, the receptors catch chemical messengers called neurotransmitters to activate your nerve cells.
Opioid receptors do just the opposite. They stop electrical pulses from traveling through your nerve cells, also known as neurons.
This dampening is handy with pain relief. Say you have chronic back pain. Your inflamed muscles are constantly sending pain signals to your brain via neurons in your spine.
Opioids quiet those nerves, relieving your pain.
Repeated use of this drug causes the brain to be tolerant of the drug. Increasing the dosage is needed to have the desired effect. When the brain gets tolerant of the drug, this negatively affects the brain's natural opioid system, so your body's endorphins get inhibited. As a person keeps taking more of these drugs, the possibility of overdosing increases exponentially. Suddenly getting off of the drugs could have seriously negative effects. This happens because the brain has adapted to functioning with the substance. When you take it away, the brain and body can't produce the neurotransmitters to function like it did before. So your body starts living off of the drug. The side effects from stopping the drugs results in anxiety, irritability, muscle pain, poor sleeping, cramping, vomiting, chills, sweating, high blood pressure, and depression, and other side effects. Drug companies are one of the biggest contributors to politicians in America. They donate more money than the banks and the oil companies. In the last 10 years, they have dumped over $2.3 billion in lobbying politicians to pass legislation in their favor. A huge benefit pharmaceutical companies receive is patent on drugs. This lets them have a monopoly on drugs for up to 20 years, blocking any other company from making cheaper generic versions, causing the prices to go down because of the competition. This allows companies to price gouge their customers, charging ridiculous prices for the product. In 2015, Martin Shkreli raised the price on a drug that has been around for 60 years, called Diaprim. People use this drug to treat tyoplasmosis. It is an infection that can kill a person with a weak immune system. It is commonly used with people who suffer with the AIDS virus. Martin raised the price by 5,000%, from $13.50 to $750 a pill. It is a shame that the United States is the only developed country not to provide health care to all its citizens as a right. A person shouldn't only get adequate health care if they are better off economically than others. It says we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. How do people in this country have the right to life when we have a health care system that profits off of death? It is time that we become a civilized country and join the other developed countries in providing health care to everyone as a right and not a motherfucking privilege. This is Marlon. You have watched another episode of Lace Yourself Politics. Like, subscribe, and I would greatly appreciate it.